What if one unexpected phone call could turn your entire life upside down? For many veterans, navigating the VA claims process is already complicated and stressful. But imagine receiving a call that suddenly puts your hard-earned benefits and even your home at risk. This isn't just a story about paperwork or bureaucracy. It's about how a single moment, a simple conversation, can set off a chain of events with real, life-altering consequences. In this video, we'll dive into the shocking experience of one veteran whose VA claim was thrown into jeopardy by a phone call he never saw coming. You'll hear what happened, why it almost cost him everything, and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself from a similar fate. Stay with me until the end, because this story reveals critical lessons every veteran needs to know. Lessons that could save your benefits and your home. Now let's get into it. The moment that phone rang, everything changed for James. A decorated veteran with years of honorable service, he thought his VA claim was secure. But the caller on the other end wasn't just checking in, they were questioning his entire case. This wasn't a routine follow-up, it was an unexpected challenge that threw his world into chaos. Suddenly, what he thought was a straightforward process became a battle for his rightful benefits. James had submitted all the required paperwork, medical records, and proof of service-related injuries. Yet, during that call, doubts were raised about the validity of his claim. The VA agent hinted at inconsistencies, suggesting his injuries might not be connected to his service after all. For James, this was a crushing blow. After years of struggle and sacrifice, to have his experiences questioned felt like a personal attack. What made this call even more alarming was the tone. It wasn't just skepticism, it carried the weight of potential denial. The VA's next steps could mean a reduction in compensation, or worse, complete rejection. James knew that this wasn't just about money. It was about his dignity, his security, and the life he had built after service. But that wasn't the whole story. This phone call was just the beginning of a complex, frustrating ordeal that would test James's resolve and reveal deep flaws in the system meant to protect veterans like him. What happened next would shock everyone involved, and it holds critical warnings for anyone navigating the VA claims process. What happened after that phone call was a whirlwind of confusion and frustration. James received official notices that his claim was being reevaluated, with requests for additional documents and medical exams he hadn't anticipated. Each letter seemed more intimidating than the last, filled with legal jargon and vague statements that left him unsure of what was really happening. It felt like the VA was shifting the goalposts, making it harder and harder for him to prove what he already knew to be true. Despite his efforts to stay organized and provide everything requested, the process dragged on for months. Each delay meant more uncertainty, mounting bills, and sleepless nights. James began to feel like he was fighting an invisible enemy, one that held all the cards but refused to play fair. Friends and fellow veterans warned him that this wasn't uncommon. Many had faced similar battles and lost more than just time. What made matters worse was the lack of clear communication. Calls often went unanswered or were redirected, and when he did get through, the answers were vague or contradictory. It felt as if the system was designed to wear him down, to discourage persistence. And behind all this red tape lurked a terrifying possibility. If his claim was denied or his rating lowered, he risked losing the compensation that helped him keep a roof over his head. But that wasn't the full picture. What James didn't realize yet was how close he was to losing not just his benefits, but his home, a reality that many veterans silently face, but few talk about openly. The true cost of this phone call was only just beginning to unfold, revealing a side of the VA claims process that is rarely seen. James soon discovered that one of the biggest hurdles wasn't just the paperwork. It was the way the VA evaluated his injuries. Despite clear evidence linking his health problems to his military service, the VA examiners repeatedly questioned the severity and service connection of his conditions. Each assessment seemed to downplay his struggles, labeling symptoms as pre-existing or unrelated, even when doctors' notes told a different story. It felt like his lived experience was being dismissed, lost in a sea of forms and conflicting opinions. This disconnect left James feeling isolated and misunderstood. He wasn't just fighting for money, he was fighting for validation of sacrifices no one else seemed to fully acknowledge. The VA's tendency to focus on technicalities rather than the whole picture often leads veterans like James into an exhausting cycle of appeals and denials. Every time he thought he was close to resolution, another setback pulled him back. Meanwhile, the strain wasn't only financial. The stress of uncertainty took a heavy toll on his mental health, worsening symptoms he was already dealing with. The system that was supposed to support him was inadvertently deepening his challenges. James learned that many veterans face this cruel paradox, where the battle for rightful compensation becomes a battle against the very bureaucracy meant to protect them. What happened next would shock everyone, revealing the hidden dangers lurking behind bureaucratic delays and underscoring the urgent need for veterans to understand their rights and the risks involved in their claims process. As James continued navigating the VA system, he received a phone call that changed everything. At first, it seemed routine, just another inquiry about his claim. But the conversation quickly took a turn he wasn't prepared for. The representative informed him that due to discrepancies in his medical records and some paperwork errors, his benefits were at risk of being reduced, or worse, terminated altogether. The shock hit him like a blow. After years of fighting to get what was rightfully his, suddenly everything was on the line. This phone call was more than just bad news. It was a warning. The VA sometimes uses minor inconsistencies as grounds to cut benefits, and many veterans don't realize how quickly this can happen. What seemed like a small detail on paper could spiral into a major crisis, jeopardizing not only financial stability but also access to essential health care. For James, the threat wasn't just hypothetical. It felt like the foundation beneath his feet was crumbling. The pressure mounted as James scrambled to gather documents, seek legal advice, and keep up with deadlines he barely understood. The reality of how fragile a veteran's claim can be became painfully clear. Mistakes, misunderstandings, or missed communications can all lead to devastating consequences. And while James fought to hold on to his benefits, the looming possibility of losing his home due to mounting debts cast a dark shadow over his future. But that wasn't the whole story. The phone call was just the beginning of a fight James never expected to face. A fight that would test his resilience and reveal uncomfortable truths about a system that's supposed to protect those who served. James soon discovered that one of the biggest challenges was the complexity of the VA's paperwork. The forms were confusing, filled with legal jargon and requirements that seemed designed to trip people up. Missing a single document or failing to respond within strict timeframes could lead to denials or cuts in benefits. Despite his best efforts, James found himself overwhelmed, caught in a maze of bureaucracy where every step felt like a gamble. The VA's communication methods only added to the frustration. Important letters often arrived late or not at all, and phone calls went unanswered or connected him to different representatives who had no knowledge of his case. This lack of clear communication meant James was constantly second-guessing whether he had done enough or missed something critical. It was a vicious cycle of uncertainty and anxiety that drained his energy and hope. Worse, James learned that the system's sheer volume of claims meant his case was often delayed or overlooked. With so many veterans seeking assistance, individual cases didn't always get the attention they deserved. James's paperwork sat in limbo for months, leaving him in a state of limbo, unsure if he would get the support he urgently needed. This delay not only affected his finances, but also his mental and physical health as stress and insecurity took their toll. And what happened next would shock everyone. Despite all his efforts, James was blindsided when the VA officially notified him of a yachting proposed reduction in his disability rating. This cut wasn't just a number on paper, it threatened to strip away the lifeline that kept his home, paid his medical bills, and supported his family. For James, this wasn't just about money, it was about survival. The system that was supposed to honor his service now seemed ready to turn its back on him at the worst possible moment. The phone call came out of nowhere, a simple message that would change everything for James. It was from a VA representative, but the tone was cold and businesslike, delivering news that no veteran wants to hear. His disability claim was under intense review, and there were serious questions about the service connection of his injuries. James felt a sinking feeling as the words sank in, realizing this call could jeopardize everything he had fought for. What made it worse was how little information he was given. The representative hinted at discrepancies in his medical records and suggested that some of his conditions might not be directly linked to his military service. James knew this wasn't true. He had endured those injuries during deployment, but the burden of proof was now on him. The phone call was a stark reminder of how the VA system could turn against even the most deserving veterans, leaving them to fight uphill battles with little guidance or support. This sudden scrutiny sparked a chain reaction that James hadn't anticipated. The VA began requesting extensive documentation, medical evaluations, and witness statements, each one more daunting than the last. Every request came with tight deadlines, and failing to comply promptly risked the loss of benefits altogether. James found himself caught in a stressful cycle of gathering papers, scheduling appointments, and navigating the complex VA bureaucracy, all while trying to maintain his day-to-day life. And the stakes couldn't have been higher. If James failed to meet the VA's demands, or if his evidence wasn't deemed sufficient, the consequences would be devastating. Not only would his disability rating drop, but he also risked losing crucial housing assistance tied to his benefits. The very home that provided stability for his family could be at risk, a reality that weighed heavily on him every waking moment. What happened next would shock everyone involved. Despite the uphill battle, James refused to back down. With determination, he sought out legal advice, connected with veteran advocacy groups, and started building a stronger case to prove his service connection. His story is a testament to resilience in the face of a system that can sometimes feel stacked against those it is meant to serve. Just when James thought he had a handle on the situation, another twist appeared. The VA suddenly scheduled a compensation and pension (C&P) exam, a crucial appointment that could make or break his claim. These exams are notorious for being stressful and, sometimes, unfairly conducted. Veterans often report feeling rushed or misunderstood, and James was no exception. He knew that the outcome of this exam would heavily influence the VA's decision, so the pressure was immense. At the exam, the examiner asked questions that seemed disconnected from James's actual experiences and injuries. The clinical, detached tone left James feeling invisible, like just another case number rather than a veteran who had sacrificed for his country. The examiner's report later suggested that James's injuries might not be as severe or as service-connected as he believed. This report became a major hurdle in his fight for fair compensation. The frustration deepened when James learned that the VA often gives more weight to these examiners' opinions than to a veteran's own medical records or personal testimony. It felt like a game rigged against him, where the outcome depended less on facts and more on an impersonal evaluation. This realization was a harsh awakening about how much power these exams hold and how little room there sometimes is for veterans' voices. But James wasn't willing to accept this without a fight. He began researching how to prepare for C&P exams, seeking advice from veterans who had successfully navigated the process. he discovered the importance of bringing detailed medical evidence, being clear and consistent in describing symptoms, and even bringing a support person if allowed. This preparation became a turning point, helping him regain some control in an otherwise overwhelming system. Still, the damage from that first exam lingered. It slowed down his claim, introduced doubt in the VA's mind, and added another layer of complexity to an already tangled process. It was a stark example of how a single appointment, handled poorly, can nearly derail a veteran's hard-earned benefits, and by extension, their livelihood. James's experience with the C&P exam highlights a critical, often overlooked aspect of VA claims. It's not just about having legitimate injuries or evidence. It's about navigating a system where one evaluation can overshadow everything else. Understanding this is key for any veteran facing similar battles, and it underscores the importance of preparation, persistence, and support in the fight for fair treatment. Just when James thought the storm had passed, he received an unexpected letter that would shake everything again. The VA informed him that because of a perceived overpayment on his benefits, they were initiating collection proceedings. Suddenly, James found himself not just fighting for his rightful compensation, but also facing the terrifying prospect of losing his home. This letter was more than just paperwork, it was a shock that nearly crushed his spirit. What made the situation even more daunting was the lack of clear explanation from the VA. James struggled to understand where the alleged overpayment had come from or how it could happen when he had been transparent throughout the process. The complexity of VA bureaucracy became painfully evident. Letters were filled with jargon, deadlines were tight, and the pressure to respond correctly was overwhelming. It felt like the system was stacked against him at every turn. The fear of foreclosure loomed large, as James knew that even a small financial misstep could result in losing the home he and his family had built. This risk added an emotional weight that went beyond the paperwork. It threatened his stability, his family's security, and his peace of mind. The stress alone was enough to impact his health, making the battle even more personal. Determined not to be defeated, James sought legal advice and connected with veteran support groups that specialized in navigating VA disputes. He learned about options like requesting a waiver of the debt due to financial hardship or appealing the decision with proper documentation. These steps weren't easy, but they were crucial in buying him time and protecting his home from immediate threat. This crisis revealed a hidden danger many veterans face. The VA's complex overpayment and debt recovery processes can turn a winning claim into a nightmare if not handled carefully. It exposed how easily veterans can be caught in a web of confusing rules that can jeopardize everything they fought to secure. James's near loss of his home was a harsh reminder that winning the claim is only part of the battle. Knowing how to manage the aftermath is just as vital. Ultimately, this experience made James realize how essential it is for veterans to stay vigilant, informed, and proactive even after their claims are approved. It's a continuous fight, and the stakes are incredibly high. Understanding these hidden pitfalls and knowing where to turn for help can make all the difference between maintaining stability and facing financial disaster. James's story shines a powerful light on the hidden struggles many veterans face long after their service ends. The battle for fair VA compensation isn't just about winning a claim. It's about navigating a complex system that can unexpectedly threaten your financial security and peace of mind. If you or someone you know is dealing with VA claims or debt recovery issues, remember that you're not alone and help is available. Taking action early, staying informed, and seeking support can protect you from surprises that could cost you everything you've worked so hard for. Thank you for joining us today and trusting us to share this important story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below, sharing what stood out most to you or any experiences you've had with VA claims. Your voice helps build a community where veterans support each other through these challenges. If you found this video helpful, Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our future content designed to empower and inform. Your support makes it possible for us to continue creating videos that matter. Stay strong, stay informed, and remember that understanding the yucky system is the first step to protecting your rights and your home. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.